Yes, it is. I didn't think for a moment there. I turned the camera on. So where was I? Desire. Okay, there's two kinds of desire: good desire, bad desire. Tanha, chanda. Tanha is like thirst. This kind of desire, thirst for something, but not thirst because you need water. That kind of thirst that one gets if they just want some Pepsi Cola or something like that. Water would do to quench the thirst. In fact, thirst, that's a bad word to give you the example. But chanda, for instance, would be to want to develop your wholesome mind states through meditation. This kind of practice, or to just learn some other ways to develop contentment and happiness in your life. Develop knowledge, wisdom. This is chanda. So it's always okay to have some form of desire, but it will always result in suffering, because what you gain, other than through the development of wholesome mind states and the reduction of unwholesome mind states, which is developed through the practice of meditation and good behavior, all other desire is only going to be ultimately unsatisfactory. So where do we look for this contentment? Well, we have to now look here and now, with where we are, what we're doing in this present moment. What are the causes and conditions around us? How can they be changed? Or what can we do to improve our understanding of those? So you take a tadpole, and it's more than happy going around in the water. And then it grows little legs, and its tail disappears, and it gets little arms, and it jumps out of the water, and it's a frog. And it's hopping around happily all over the place. There's hundreds of them around here. And they're lovely little happy creatures. And they go back into the water, and then they come out again. But if you were to take that frog and say, now you've got to take your arms and legs off, we'll give you a tail, you can just swim around in the water again, how is it going to be? Well, by comparison to how it was hopping around, eating its flies, catching its freedom, you might think, it's not going to be very happy. By comparison. But whilst it was swimming around as a tadpole, it was a much easier life. It had less predators. It wasn't really having to look far for its food. It could survive on plankton swimming around and algae in the water. It had a simpler life. And it wasn't concerned. It was content, because it didn't know about little legs and arms and hopping around outside catching flies. Now, we can still have expectations of a better future and the good things that we can do and enjoy, and we can still compare that to our past with comparison. But that doesn't mean it has to detract from the value of now. Because the value of now, if we bring our attention, our conscious awareness, right into this present moment, is worth so much more than anything we can imagine about the future or think we remember about the past. I say think because our memory is sometimes about as reliable as our imagination. In that I mean it's not very reliable. We don't remember everything very well. We remember what we need to, but not everything, not in every detail. If I asked you, how were your emotions at 11 o'clock this time yesterday, on a scale of 1 to 9, from sadness to happiness, or 1 to 10, sadness to happiness, you might have some idea, but perhaps not such a good idea as to what were you exactly doing at 11 o'clock yesterday. And you may be able to say, I was on the number 36 bus going to X or Y, doing this, driving here, going there. But how you were feeling at that time, you might not remember. But you go back a year or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it's very difficult indeed to remember how happy you were specifically in a moment, in a time back then. You may say, oh, I was going through a pretty miserable part of my life, or I was going through a really good, happy part of my life. But in that part of your life, there were really some bad moments and some really good moments. It's always the way. So, how do we bring ourselves back into this present moment? Well, it always comes back to that fourth noble truth, the path leading to the end of suffering, or the way to the end of suffering. And the Buddha's given us this simple teaching. Now, however complicated the questions get that come in, however long the emails are, there's always the same answer. There's the practice and there's the understanding, the result of the practice. Now, the practice is the Noble Eightfold Path. The understanding is the Four Noble Truths, that there's suffering, a cause of suffering and an end of suffering. But also, it is the understanding of these characteristics of our existence. That everything is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and out of our control. In Pali we call it anicca, dukkha, anatta. That understanding is that wisdom you do not lose. When you know that, you cannot unknow that, because it's experiential and it's always there with you, in every breath, in every moment. Once you know what it is, once you can see it, it cannot be unseen, unknown. And this wisdom is developed through that Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation or concentration. Meditation, let's call it, and mindfulness, meditation. Two sides of the same coin, two sides of the same hand, yes? We have mindfulness practice when we're walking around, sort of concentrated samadhi meditation when we're sitting meditating. This formal sitting meditation is where we develop our powers of observation, our powers of keeping the mind still, like sharpening a knife in order to cut smoothly through life. If you go at a tomato with a blunt knife, it makes a horrible mess. You sharpen it, it slices through nicely. The same with your mind. With meditation, you sharpen your mind, your powers of focus, so you slice through life with a clear view, sometimes called vipassana, the seeing clearly of not only impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and things being out of your control, but each and every moment as it's happening, for what it is, whether it's good, whether it's bad. But actually bringing it right into the moment rather than by comparison to the past or through expectations of the future not being met. bringing it back into this moment, into this each and every breath, which is what we can do when we simply sit and meditate, that's all. That is the place of no suffering, the place of contentment, the place of happiness. Try it now. After this finishes, sit and just do nothing for a few moments. Watch your breathing in and your breathing out. It doesn't have to be very long, but see that right there, in that moment, there is no suffering. You may have something coming later. There may have been something before, but not now, not in that moment. And you can slowly extend this time through meditation. And then this feeling of contentment will leak into the rest of your existence, into your life. And you will have this happiness, this contentment throughout all of your daily activities, as well as being able to use the practice of mindfulness to do things a little bit more carefully, not more slowly. You might take a little bit more time with each process. Say, stepping a little bit more carefully. Living here in the forest, you have to walk around so carefully, not only to protect the little creatures that you might tread on, because there are so many everywhere, all sizes, but to protect yourself. We have just flip-flops, you know, we tread on a snake, we've got a problem. But it doesn't mean we walk around and never get anywhere because we walk so slowly. It means we walk carefully. We're not stubbing our toes, tripping over tree roots. I know when I first lived in the forest in a monastery a while back now, I was doing that all of the time. Stubbing my toe, tripping over root. I was fortunately just that. I wasn't bitten by snakes, but I could have been. And we learn by doing things carefully, we get things done more efficiently and ultimately therefore more quickly. Before you get out of the car, I always say this, but it's a good analogy, you turn the keys off, stop, put your hands on your lap like this, one on each leg, and breathe a few times. And then take the keys out of the ignition and get out of the car. What do? No, we don't do that. Normally, we turn the car ignition off at the same time as pulling the handbrake on, grabbing our bag from the seat next to us, opening the door, all in one fluid moment, all at the same time. Before we know it, we slam the door behind us, our right foot is ahead of us, our left foot being dragged behind. In fact, our head, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our thinking is already in the building. Oh, where are the keys? Oh, locked in the car. Made a mistake, then you're held up for the rest of the day. Now that's just an example. Or you could trip up, or you could leave a document in the car, whatever. If you just slow down for a moment and do one thing at a time. I know multitasking is a great talent, but it also takes away the appreciation of doing each and every task well. If you do 3 things at the same time, and we can all do that, each of those things is only getting 1/3 of your mindfulness, of your attention. And that Noble Eightfold Path says mindfulness, sati, mindfulness, in everything we do. And that way, your life runs more smoothly. Now we divide that Noble Eightfold Path into 3 categories of sila, which is good behaviour, moral virtue. And that is the second, so the right intention, and third, right speech, and fourth, right action, and fifth, right livelihood. So 4 of those parts of the Noble Eightfold Path is just covered by keeping those 5 precepts. So half of the Noble Eightfold Path, Sila, a third of, we have Sila, good behaviour, Samadhi, meditation, and wisdom, Panya. But 1/2 of that whole Noble Eightfold Path is those 4, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 4 things, which are just covered by not killing things, not stealing things, refraining from sexual misconduct, not lying, and not taking intoxicants. Those 5 precepts is all of your Sila. That's 1/3 of the practice. And right effort, mindfulness, and meditation, those 3 things really are the meditation aspect. Just finding a little time each day to sit and enjoy this moment, this current moment. You cannot be expected to start appreciating the present moment unless you literally do sit on the floor and do nothing and look at it for a little while. This is the point of meditation. It's not about beautiful environments, sunsets, and sitting there, peace and love and all of this flowery stuff. Okay, that will calm the mind temporarily, but you could just go out with your friends or watch a good movie to do that. If you really want to find happiness, it's in contentment. And where is contentment? It's in the present moment. Where is freedom from suffering? It's in the present moment. Where it cannot get you, you're protected from it. Even if you have pains and health problems, they are only a problem because you're projecting with your expectations how they will progress into the future. And you're also comparing this moment to the past. Right here, right now, even a pain in your leg or whatever the suffering is, when you really do get this practice down to a fine art, and it doesn't take long, it's just discipline, which is that effort. Right effort. The 6th, yes, of the Noble Eightfold Path. The 6th item, right effort. That effort of just discipline to sit and meditate for a time each day will give you that ability to find that present moment and enjoy it, free from suffering. So we develop this meditation, which then gives us this insight. Through seeing clearly in all of our daily activities and in our own actions, in what we're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and how our mind is working, both our physical feelings and our mental emotions, we see how they, one minute they're not there, then they are. A pain will arise or an emotion will arise. It could be happiness, it could be sadness, it doesn't matter. What is it? It is impermanent. You're never going to always be happy. You're not also going to always be sad. You're never going to always be in pain. And you're not always going to be free from pain. You might say, yes, but I'm always in pain. Well, look at that pain. It moves around. It's not always in the same place. And if it's always in the same place and it is untreatable, and you have to bear that for the rest of your life, it is only for the rest of your life. See? Nothing is permanent. Now, I don't mean that cruelly or facetiously, but we will get used to, if a pain really does not move from one spot, and it's there all of the time, you do get used to it. What you don't get used to is these terribly irritating pains that keep moving around a little bit, because then they're always reminding you that they're there. Why? Comparison and expectation. Oh, this shoulder's hurting today. Yesterday it was that one. Oh, this one. And yesterday it was that one. If it's always that one, you're going to forget about it after not very long. comparison and expectation. Remember these signposts. Look out for them along the way. You'll spot them very quickly. The next thing you're going to do is, I'm going to make a cup of coffee. Go to get some hot water. We don't boil our own water. There's hot water in a thing. My expectation would be that, I'm not actually necessarily going to do this, but it's an example. There'll be some hot water there. Because there was this morning, or yesterday, or earlier, by comparison. And then if I get there and there's no hot water, oh, suffering, I'm so disappointed. But if I'm not expecting, when I see that expectation arise, I mindfully say to myself, but of course there may not be some hot water. It may have been switched off already. Then when I get there, oh, I thought it may have been switched off already. There is no hot water. There is no coffee. It isn't so bad, is it? So, this is where suffering is. In the past, in the future. And anxiety, which is a whole other topic that I will talk about again, is often built on this kind of suffering. This understanding of, or lack of understanding, that we may not reach our expectations and they may not be comparable to the past. Our expectations are just imagination. Remember that, and our comparisons are of the past, in the past, where they will always be. Tomorrow never comes. It's always today. And wherever you are always here. So, appreciably, this is hard to get your mind around the bombardments of modern day, well, any time throughout history, of life, the vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs, chopping and changing, storms, everything changing all of the time, is where suffering comes about. But then if it wasn't changing, boredom would come about. And this in turn is also suffering. Why? Because you weren't expecting it to be always the same. You're expecting improvement or change. Expectation. So you can still expect, but when you know about expectation, you can let go. You can hold it gently, like a fragile object. Don't hold expectation tightly. Why? You'll break it. But more importantly, you break yourself when it doesn't happen the way you expected. And similarly with comparison. By all means, we learn from our mistakes, but hold that gently. Don't think each and every time that you made a mistake that time, it might next time be the right thing to do. Not always, but you don't know. Again, hold your comparisons to the past gently, not tightly. Otherwise, you will break. Let go and know. Know and let go. So this is the practice, and this is the wisdom we develop from the practice. The practice of sila, samadhi, panya, good behavior, meditation, and the development of wholesome mind states, reduction of unwholesome mind states, or wisdom, but not intellectual knowledge, or wisdom, that knowing, to know and let go. So I'll leave it there, and I hope you can have an enjoyable weekend in the present moment. Don't compare it to last weekend, and don't expect next weekend to be better. Enjoy this one you have coming up or whenever this video is on, you are in now, this weekend. With whomever you're with as well. Share your contentment. And this really truly is sharing metta. Because when those around you get the feeling of your contentment, they too will have that feeling. They may not even know why, but they will feel good, and then that comes back to you again. Causes and conditions are always improved by your own perception. Okay, so my best wishes to you. Be happy and be well. Goodbye.